In front of everyone, he called me a disgrace, but the envelope I handed him made him cry. Ashley's hands trembled as she clutched the white envelope. The birthday dinner for her mother-in-law had turned into a nightmare when Richard stood up from his chair and began shouting in front of the entire family. "You're a disgrace to this family," he said, pointing his finger at her. "I don't even know how my son married someone so insignificant." The words cut like razors. Everyone at the table fell silent. Barbara, the birthday girl, lowered her eyes. Matthew, her husband, tried to say something, but his father interrupted him sharply. "Shut up, Matthew. It's time you see the truth about this woman." Ashley pressed the envelope to her chest. Inside were documents she had discovered just a few months earlier. Documents that would change everything for this family. But at that moment, all she could feel was the sting of his cruel words. "Dad, please," Matthew tried again. "Please, nothing." Matthew tried. "She came out of nowhere. No family, no background. And you, like a fool, fell for her when she was just a simple cleaner at my office." Her sister-in-law Jessica smirked, pleased by the humiliation. Her brother-in-law Brandon discreetly filmed the scene with his phone, amused by the spectacle. Ashley knew they had never accepted her into the family. "Richard, stop," Barbara said softly. "It's my birthday." "Your mother's right, Dad," Matthew agreed. "Today isn't the day for this." "Today is exactly the day," Richard snapped. "I'm tired of pretending I accept her. Just look at how she's dressed. She looks like a maid at our family's table." Ashley glanced down at her simple beige sweater and jeans. She had chosen modest clothes because she knew anything she wore would be criticized. No matter what she did, it would never be enough for this man. "She doesn't even have an education," Richard continued. "She depends on my son for everything. She's a parasite." "That's not true," Ashley murmured, finally finding her voice. "Not true," Richard scoffed. "Then tell me, what do you do with your life besides spending my son's money?" Ashley took a deep breath. 2 years ago, she had completed a technical accounting course and worked remotely for a small company. But she had kept it a secret, wanting to surprise Matthew once she was more stable in her job. "I work," she said quietly. "Work where?" Jessica mocked. "I've never seen you leave the house for work." "From home. I do accounting for a small business." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. Richard slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. "Liar! You've always been a liar. Ever since you came into our lives, you've brought nothing but trouble." "She's not a liar," Matthew defended, standing up. "Ashley, why didn't you ever tell me about this job?" "I wanted to wait a little longer," she replied, tears beginning to fall. "I wanted to be sure it would work out." "Of course, another excuse," Brandon said, putting his phone away. "There's always a ready-made story." Barbara shifted in her chair, uncomfortable. "Everyone, let's stop this. It's my birthday. I don't want fighting." "Mom, you need to understand," Richard said, turning to his wife. "This woman isn't meant for our family. She was abandoned as a baby, raised by simple folk. No education, no class." "I wasn't abandoned," Ashley said, her voice shaking. "I was adopted." "It's the same thing," Richard replied coldly. "Your real parents didn't want you, and I understand why." Matthew stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Dad, now you've gone too far. I won't let you talk to my wife like that." "Your wife?" Richard laughed bitterly. 2 years of marriage and she hasn't even given you a child yet. I bet she's barren too." The pain in his words hit Ashley like a punch to the gut. They had decided to wait a little longer to have children, but she knew the family constantly pressured them about it. "Enough!" shouted Matthew. "I won't listen to another word of this." "Oh, you will," Richard shot back, "because you need to know who you really married, a woman with no past, no history, no family." Ashley looked around the table. Jessica and Brandon watched as if it were a spectacle. Barbara seemed uncomfortable but did nothing to stop her husband. Only Matthew was on her side. "Actually," Ashley said, finding courage from somewhere deep inside, "I do have a history and a family." "Oh, really?" Richard mocked. And where is this family? Why have they never shown up? Because you don't know the whole truth, she replied, gripping the envelope tighter. And neither did I until a few months ago. The room fell silent for a moment. Something in Ashley's tone made everyone pay attention. What truth? Barbara asked, speaking up for the first time. Ashley looked at each person at the table. For years, she had endured the humiliation, the jokes, the cruel remarks, always believing she deserved it for being different, for not being born with a silver spoon in her mouth. The truth about who I really am, she said, and about who you are. Richard crossed his arms, still defiant. Fine, let's hear this fairy tale. I bet you made up some noble family to impress us. I didn't make up anything, Ashley replied. I found the truth in old documents and from people who were there when I was born. Documents? Matthew asked, surprised. What documents? Ashley held up the white envelope. It's all in here. The truth about my origins, about why I was adopted, about who my real parents were. Jessica rolled her eyes. Here comes the soap opera. It's not a soap opera, Ashley said firmly. It's real life, and it's going to hurt when you find out. The housekeeper, Mrs. Jenkins, had been serving coffee when she froze at those words. She had worked for the family for over 30 years and knew many secrets she had never shared. What do you mean by that? Barbara asked, now genuinely curious. I mean, there are things in this family that have been hidden for a long time, Ashley answered. Things that explain a lot about the past. Richard grew impatient. Stop stalling and just say what you have to say. What's this story? It's the story of a young woman who got pregnant 30 years ago, Ashley began, watching their reactions. A young woman who was kicked out of her own home when she needed support the most. Barbara pressed a hand to her chest, as if sensing something. Ashley, what are you trying to say? I'm saying I found out who my birth mother was, she replied. And you'll be surprised when you learn who she was. The tension in the room was thick. Even Brandon had put his phone away and was listening. Her name was Jennifer, Ashley continued. Jennifer Parker. Mrs. Jenkins dropped a plate, which shattered on the floor. The noise made everyone turn to her, but the housekeeper was pale, staring at Ashley. Mrs. Jenkins, do you recognize that name? Barbara asked. The older woman glanced nervously at Richard, then back at Ashley. I... she stammered. Speak, Jenkins, Richard ordered, though his voice lacked its usual firmness. I knew a Jennifer a long time ago, the housekeeper admitted. When I was younger, and worked for Mr. Richard's parents. The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley could see Richard growing paler by the second. Go on, encouraged Barbara. She was a very beautiful young woman, said Mrs. Jenkins, looking at Ashley. She had the same green eyes as you. Matthew looked at his wife, noticing for the first time the resemblance that had been mentioned. Jenkins, said Richard, his voice hoarse. You don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do, sir, replied the housekeeper, finding her courage. Jennifer was your sister. The impact of that revelation was like a bomb exploding in the room. Jessica gasped. Brandon was speechless. Barbara brought her hands to her face, and Matthew looked incredulously from his father to his wife. That's a lie, said Richard, but his voice trembled. My sister disappeared a long time ago. She didn't disappear, said Ashley, opening the envelope. She was kicked out, thrown out of her own home when she was pregnant and needed help. She pulled out an old yellowed photo and showed it to everyone. It was a young woman with dark hair and green eyes, clearly pregnant, standing in front of a house that Barbara recognized as Richard's parents' old home. This is my mother, said Ashley. Jennifer Parker, your sister, Richard. The photo passed from hand to hand. The resemblance between Ashley and the young woman in the photo was undeniable. The same green eyes, the same face shape, the same sad smile. How did you get this? Asked Barbara, her voice full of emotion. It took months of investigation, explained Ashley. I always knew I was adopted, but my adoptive parents, God rest their souls, never told me details about my origins. Richard was in shock, staring at the photo. Jennifer, he murmured. My little sister. Your little sister, whom you let be thrown out of the house, corrected Ashley, her voice harsher now. Your little sister who needed support and only found rejection. I didn't know, said Richard, his voice barely a whisper. My father said she had gotten involved with a married man and that she was a disgrace to the family. And you believed it without question? Asked Ashley, without trying to find out the truth. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. I was young, Richard defended himself. I was only 20. My father was very strict, said she had dishonored the family. And then? Pressed Ashley. In the years that followed, did you ever try to look for her? Richard lowered his head. I did. I searched for her for years, but I never found a trace. Do you know why? Asked Ashley, pulling another document from the envelope. Because she changed her name when she moved to another state. She went far away from here to start a new life. She showed an altered birth certificate. Her name was Jennifer Parker Bennett. She only kept the Parker surname to hide from you. Barbara began to cry softly. My God, what a sad story. It's not over yet, said Ashley. There's more. She pulled out a yellowed letter, handwritten in delicate script. This letter was written by her shortly after I was born. It was kept by a nurse at the hospital where I was born. What does it say? Asked Matthew, stepping closer to his wife. Ashley opened the letter and began to read. To whoever one day finds my daughter. My name is Jennifer, and I'm leaving this letter because I don't know if I'll ever have the chance to tell her story in person. I was forced to give her up for adoption because my family abandoned me when I needed them most. My brother Richard didn't lift a finger to defend me when our father threw me out of the house. I hope my daughter grows up knowing she was loved, even if I couldn't raise her. The room was completely silent, broken only by Barbara's sobs and the muffled sound of Richard crying. Keep going, urged Matthew, placing a hand on his wife's shoulder. If she ever meets her father's family, I hope she's welcomed more than I was. My daughter has Parker blood running through her veins, even if they rejected that blood when she was still in my womb. She has the right to know where she came from, even if I didn't have the right to stay. Richard raised his head, his eyes red. She talks as if I could have done something, but I was just a boy. My father was authoritarian, violent. No one stood up to him. She was 17, Ashley replied, just a girl herself, and she was pregnant and alone. How did you find all this out? Asked Jessica, genuinely curious now. It started when my adoptive parents passed away, Ashley explained. They left a box with some documents about my adoption. Documents they never showed me. She pulled more papers from the envelope. There was the name of the hospital where I was born, the exact date, and the name of the nurse who cared for my mother. I started there. And did you manage to find that nurse? Asked Barbara. She had already passed away, but her daughter kept many of the stories her mother told, including the one about a pregnant young girl who was abandoned by her family and had to give her baby up for adoption. Ashley showed a photograph of an older woman holding a baby. This is the nurse holding me when I was born. She was moved by my case because she thought it was so sad for a family to abandon a pregnant girl. What else did you find out? Asked Brandon, now completely drawn into the story. I found out my mother tried to rebuild her life in another state, Ashley continued. She worked as a seamstress, lived in a modest boarding house, never married. Why not? Asked Barbara. According to people who knew her, she said she had a very painful secret in her past. She never allowed herself to be completely happy. Richard was visibly shaken. And did she live well? No, Ashley answered, watching his reaction. She had a hard life, always struggling to survive, and always carrying the pain of being rejected by her family and having to give up her daughter. How do you know all this? Asked Matthew. Because I found her, Ashley said softly. Everyone in the room froze. What do you mean, found her? Asked Barbara. I found where she lived in her final years. I talked to neighbors, to people who knew her. She spoke of me constantly. Tears began to stream down Ashley's face. She searched for me for years. Tried to find me through adoption services, but never could because my adoptive parents moved to another city when I was little. So you never met? Asked Barbara, her voice full of compassion. No, Ashley replied, her voice breaking. She passed when I was 25, 3 years before I started looking for her. The weight of this revelation fell over everyone like a tombstone. The room was completely silent for several minutes. My God, murmured Richard. Jennifer, my little sister. There's more, said Ashley, taking a deep breath. She left letters, many letters. Letters? Asked Matthew. Letters she wrote to me every year, on my birthday. She kept them, hoping one day she could give them to me. Ashley pulled a bundle of yellowed envelopes from the main one. There are 28 letters, one for every birthday I spent without her. Barbara reached out. Can I see one? Ashley hesitated for a moment, then handed Barbara a letter. She opened it carefully and began to read softly. My dear daughter, today you turn 15. I don't know if you're tall or short, if you have my green eyes or take after your father. I hope you're happy, that you have friends, that you're studying. I work in a factory now, but I'm taking night classes to get a better job. Everything I do is with you in mind, waiting for the day I can meet you and explain why I had to give you to others to care for. Barbara's voice broke at the end. She handed the letter to Richard, who read it with trembling hands. I hope your adoptive family loves you dearly and gives you everything I couldn't. But know that you never left my heart, not even for a minute. You are my daughter, my love, my reason for living. One day we'll meet, and then I'll be able to ask for your forgiveness for abandoning you, even though I had no choice. Richard stopped reading, openly sobbing now. She didn't abandon me, said Ashley, looking straight at him. You're the ones who abandoned her. You abandoned me before I was even born. Ashley, Matthew tried. No, Matthew, she interrupted. I need to say this. All these years I've felt inferior in this family. I thought it was me who didn't deserve to be here. I thought I was the one with some flaw. She turned to Richard. You called me a disgrace today, said I had no breeding, no family, no class. But the truth is, I do have family. I share the same blood as you. I'm your niece. Ashley, Richard said, trying to step closer. No, she stepped back. Now it's my turn to speak. For 2 years I endured your humiliations in silence. I let you treat me like trash your son brought home. Tears streamed freely down her face now. You made me believe I was worthless, that I was an intruder, that I didn't deserve to be here. But the truth is, I have just as much right to be at this table as any of you. You're right, Richard said, his voice breaking. You're absolutely right. You know what's most ironic? Ashley continued. You say I have no class, no manners, but who showed class here tonight? Who behaved with dignity? She looked around the table. I endured your insults quietly. I didn't retaliate, didn't shout, didn't disrespect anyone, because that's how I was raised. By my adoptive parents, who may have been simple, but had far more class than you showed today. Jessica and Brandon sat embarrassed, staring at their plates. And you two, Ashley said, turning to them, who laughed at my humiliation, who found it amusing to watch me suffer. You're my family too. We're cousins. Ashley, Jessica began. You always sensed something familiar about me, Ashley went on. Every time you said I didn't belong here, you were close to uncovering the truth. What do you mean? Brandon asked. Barbara once told me I reminded her of someone, but she couldn't figure out who, Ashley explained. Not someone from the present, someone from the past. It was Jennifer. Barbara nodded. It's true. I always found you familiar, but I never knew why. Because you knew my mother when she was young, Ashley said. Before she was kicked out of the house. I did know her, Barbara admitted. Jennifer was a sweet girl, always smiling. Richard was very fond of her. Fond? Ashley asked, looking at her father-in-law. Jennifer was my baby sister, Richard said, wiping his eyes. I protected her from everything when we were kids. She was my little doll. And when she needed protection the most, you weren't there, Ashley pointed out. I know, he admitted, and it's eaten at me for 30 years. 30 years? Matthew questioned. So you knew she was pregnant? I did, Richard confessed. I knew and did nothing to stop my father from throwing her out. The confession cast another tense silence over the room. Why not? Barbara asked, clearly shocked. Because I was a coward, Richard said simply. Because I was afraid of my father. Because it was easier to let him do as he pleased than to stand up to him. And then you spent your whole life shifting your guilt onto other people, Ashley observed. Including me. What do you mean? Asked Matthew. Think about it, Ashley said. Your father was always harsh with me from day one. He always treated me like an intruder. It's not because I'm poor or because I was adopted. She looked directly at Richard. It's because deep down you always knew who I was. Subconsciously you recognized your sister in me, and every time you looked at me, you were reminded of your own cowardice. Richard couldn't deny it. The truth was written all over his face. That's why you hated me so much, Ashley continued, because I represented your guilt. I was the living proof of what you didn't do when you should have. You're right, Richard admitted. From the first moment I saw you, something about you bothered me. I didn't know what it was, but now I understand. Mrs. Jenkins, Barbara called. You knew, didn't you? The older housekeeper nodded reluctantly. I suspected it from the day you brought her here, she admitted. She looks just like Jennifer at that age. Why didn't you ever say anything? Richard asked. It wasn't my place, Mrs. Jenkins replied. Besides, I wasn't sure. And after what happened to Jennifer, I learned to keep quiet about this family's secrets. What other secrets? Brandon asked. Mrs. Jenkins glanced nervously at Richard. Mrs. Jenkins, you can speak now, he said. There's nothing left to hide. Jennifer wasn't the only person your grandfather kicked out of this house, the housekeeper revealed. There were other similar situations over the years. What do you mean? Barbara asked. Your grandfather was a very harsh man, Mrs. Jenkins explained. Anything he considered shameful for the family, he eliminated. He'd cast people out, cut ties, pretend they never existed. My God, Barbara murmured. What kind of family was this? A family ruled by fear, Richard said. My father governed through fear, and I swore I'd never be like him. But you were, Ashley said softly. With me, you were exactly like him. The truth of her words hit Richard like a punch. He looked down at his trembling hands. You're right, he said. I became my father. Not completely, Ashley replied, because you still have a chance to do things differently. How? He asked, looking at her with eyes full of hope and remorse. By accepting who I am, she answered. By accepting that I'm your niece, that I'm family, that I deserve respect. Of course you do, Barbara said, standing up to embrace Ashley. My dear, forgive us. Barbara's hug was warm and genuine. Ashley felt as if a great weight had lifted from her shoulders. And there's one more thing, Ashley said when Barbara released her. What else? Matthew asked. My mother left more than just letters, she explained, pulling more documents from the envelope. She left a small inheritance. Inheritance? Brandon asked. All those years she saved money, Ashley said. Little by little, penny by penny, because she hoped that one day she'd find me and be able to help me. She held up a bank statement. When she passed, she left everything to me. It's not much, but it's been growing for 3 years. How much? Jessica asked, curious. Enough for Matthew and me to put a down payment on our own home, Ashley replied, looking at her husband. So we don't have to depend on anyone else. Matthew was stunned. Ashley, why didn't you ever tell me any of this? Because I wanted to be sure of everything first, she explained, and because I wanted it to be a surprise. A good surprise, not like how things turned out. You don't have to leave, Barbara said quickly. This is your home too. I do, Ashley replied, but without bitterness. I need to start my own family. Matthew and I need our own space. But you'll still visit us, right? Asked Barbara anxiously. We will, promised Ashley. After all, we're family. She looked at Richard. If you'll accept me as family. Richard stood from his chair and walked toward her. His steps were slow, heavy with emotion. "Ashley," he said, his voice trembling, "can you forgive me?" She looked into his eyes. She saw genuine pain, true remorse. "I can," she said, "but on one condition." "What?" "That you tell me about my mother," she asked. "About what she was like as a child, what games she loved, how her smile looked. I want to know Jennifer through your memories." Richard began to cry again, but this time they were tears of relief. "I can do that," he said. "I have so many stories to tell about your mother." He hugged her, and for the first time since joining that family, Ashley felt truly accepted. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Wait," Brandon suddenly said. "If Ashley is our cousin, then you spent 2 years mistreating a member of your own family," Matthew finished. "That's right," Ashley confirmed. "And it wasn't just you. The whole extended family, all your friends. Everyone saw me being humiliated and no one ever questioned if it was right." "We didn't know," Jessica tried to justify. "You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with respect," Ashley replied. "You treated me badly because you thought you could, because I was different, because I came from humble beginnings." "You're right," Jessica admitted. "We were prejudiced and cruel." "You were," Ashley agreed, "but now you have the chance to change that too." "How?" asked Brandon. "By being the family my mother always wanted me to have," she answered. "By being the people she'd be proud to call her nieces and nephews." The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Jenkins, who had returned from the kitchen with hot coffee. "Excuse me," she said, serving the cups. "Can I say something?" "Of course, Mrs. Jenkins," Barbara said. "I knew Jennifer when she was little," the housekeeper began. "She was a special girl, always caring about others. When she got pregnant, I knew it wasn't irresponsibility." "How did you know?" Ashley asked. "Because she was in love," Mrs. Jenkins revealed. "In love with a young man who worked at the bank where your grandfather had an account. A serious young man, from a good family." "What happened to him?" Matthew asked. "He never knew about the pregnancy," Mrs. Jenkins explained. "When Jennifer found out she was pregnant, his family transferred him to another city. They had a wedding planned." "So my father," Ashley began. "Your father never knew you existed," Mrs. Jenkins confirmed. "Jennifer never got the chance to tell him." This revelation added a new dimension to the story. Ashley wasn't the child of a forbidden romance or a youthful mistake. She was the child of love. "How do you know all this?" Barbara asked. "Because Jennifer told me," Mrs. Jenkins said. "The night before she was sent away, she came to me crying. She said she loved the baby's father but would never see him again." "Did she ever try to find him later?" Ashley asked. "From what people who knew her afterward said, she tried to track him down for a few years," Mrs. Jenkins replied. "But she never could. I don't think he even knew she had disappeared." "What was his name?" Matthew asked. Mrs. Jenkins hesitated. "Mrs. Jenkins," Richard encouraged, "you can tell us everything now." "Michael Thompson," she said. "He worked as a manager at the bank." Ashley grew thoughtful. "Thompson. Do you think he's still alive?" "Why do you want to know?" Barbara asked. "Because he's my father," Ashley replied simply. "And maybe he deserves to know he had a daughter." "Ashley," said Matthew, concerned, "are you sure you want to dig into this?" "I am," she answered. "My mother spent her whole life dreaming of a reunion. Maybe I can fulfill her dream in some way." "How?" asked Brandon. "By finding my father and telling him about Jennifer," Ashley explained. "Telling him they had a daughter together." "What if he's married?" Jessica asked. "What if he has a family?" "Then I'll respect that," Ashley said. "But he deserves to know the truth. My mother carried this secret alone her entire life. It's not fair." Richard shifted in his chair. "Ashley, I can help you find him." "How?" "I have contacts in the banking system," he explained. "I can try to track down where Michael Thompson is now." "You'd do that?" she asked, surprised. "I would," he confirmed. "It's the least I can do for my sister and my niece." The word niece sounded different now, filled with affection and acceptance, not obligation. "Thank you," Ashley said, smiling for the first time that night. "Is there anything else in the envelope?" Barbara asked curiously. "There is," Ashley said, pulling out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "This was the only thing my mother kept from your family." She carefully unwrapped it, revealing a small necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. "Do you recognize it?" she asked. Richard gasped. "It's our grandmother's necklace," he said. "My mother gave it to Jennifer when she turned 15. Jennifer always wore it," Barbara remembered. "I never saw her without it." "She kept it until the end," Ashley said, emotional. "Even after everything that happened, she held on to this connection with the family." "And now the necklace has returned to where it always belonged," Barbara said. "To the family." "No," Ashley replied, closing her fist around the necklace. "It belongs to me. It's the only inheritance I have from my mother besides the letters." "Of course," Richard agreed quickly. "It's rightfully yours." "But I'd like one thing," Ashley said. "What?" Barbara asked. "I'd like your help organizing a memorial for my mother," she requested. "Something to honor her memory." "What kind of memorial?" Matthew asked. "I'm not sure yet," Ashley admitted. "Maybe a tree planted in a special place, or a donation to an organization that helps young mothers." "We could create a scholarship," Barbara suggested, "for girls who become pregnant young but want to continue their education." "In Jennifer Parker's name," Richard added, "so she's remembered as someone who overcame hardships." "It's perfect," Ashley said, tears welling in her eyes again. The family spent the next hours talking about Jennifer, about the past, about the future. Slowly, the tension of the evening gave way to a sense of real connection. As the night grew late, Ashley and Matthew prepared to leave. "Ashley," Richard called before she left. "Yes?" "I know I can't undo the last 2 years," he said, "but I can try to be different from now on." "You can," she agreed, "and I'll give you that chance." "And you don't have to move out," Barbara insisted. "We can all live together." "Mom," Matthew said, "we need our own space, but we won't disappear. We'll keep visiting often." "Promise?" Barbara asked. "Promise," Ashley confirmed. "After all, this is my family now too." In the car on the way home, Matthew held Ashley's hand. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Relieved," she answered. "I finally know who I am. I finally understand why your father treated me the way he did." "He was wrong," Matthew said. "Even if you weren't family, he was wrong." "I know," Ashley said. "But now I understand it wasn't about me, it was about his guilt." "And now, what will you do with all this information?" "I'm going to find my father," she said firmly. "I'll tell him about Jennifer and about me. What if he doesn't want to know?" "Then I'll respect that," said Ashley. "But at least he'll know the truth." They drove in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their thoughts. "Ashley," Matthew said suddenly. "Yes?" "I love you," he said. "No matter what family, what background or anything else, I love you for who you are." "I know," she said, smiling, "and that's why it worked between us." "How so?" "Because you loved me without knowing where I came from," she explained. "You chose me for myself, not for my family or my past. And now that you've discovered all this, has anything changed?" he asked. "It has," she replied. "Now I feel complete. Now I know where I come from, and I can decide where I want to go." In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic changed completely. Richard began investigating Michael Thompson's whereabouts, using his contacts in the banking world. Barbara organized the first meeting to plan Jennifer's memorial. Jessica and Brandon, initially awkward, slowly started getting closer to Ashley in a more genuine way. Mrs. Jenkins, relieved to finally speak about the past, began telling stories about Jennifer to Ashley, helping her get to know her birth mother better. A month after the revelation, Richard managed to locate Michael Thompson. He was living in Chicago, married with 2 teenage children and working as a bank director. "And now," asked Barbara, "how will you reach out?" "I'll write a letter," Ashley decided, "explaining who I am and why I'm contacting him." "Do you want my help?" Matthew offered. "I do," she said. "I need to find the right words." The letter took weeks to write. Ashley wanted to tell the whole story without causing too much shock. She wanted Michael to know about Jennifer, about the love she had for him, about the daughter they had together. When the letter was finally ready, Ashley sent it with a heavy heart. Now, all she could do was wait. The reply came 2 weeks later. Michael had been shocked by the revelation, but wanted to meet Ashley. He confessed he had never forgotten Jennifer and had always wondered what had happened to her. The meeting was set at a neutral cafe downtown. Ashley was nervous but determined. Michael was a handsome man with graying hair and kind eyes. When he saw Ashley, he began to cry. "You have her eyes," he said, "exactly like hers." "Do you remember my mother?" Ashley asked. "I remember everything about her," he replied. "Jennifer was the great love of my youth. When my family moved me to another city, I thought I'd die of longing." "Why did you two separate?" "My parents didn't approve of the relationship," Michael explained. "They thought Jennifer was too young, that I needed to focus on my career. They transferred me overnight." "And you never contacted her again?" "I tried," he confessed. "I wrote letters I never sent. I called her house a few times, but they told me she had moved away." "Actually, she was kicked out," Ashley said, "when they found out she was pregnant." Michael was stunned. "Kicked out? Why?" "Because her parents thought it would dishonor the family," Ashley explained. "She had to fend for herself." "My God," he murmured. If I had known, I would have come back right away." "She knew that," Ashley said softly. "That's why she never tried to find you later. She didn't want to disrupt your life." "Disrupt?" He laughed sadly. "She was my life." They spent hours talking. Michael wanted to know everything about Jennifer, about how she had lived, about how she had raised Ashley. "She didn't raise me," Ashley clarified. "She had to give me up for adoption." The pain on Michael's face was visible. "Did she suffer a lot?" he asked. "She did," Ashley admitted. "But she never stopped loving me. She never stopped thinking about me." "And you? How was your life?" "I was lucky," said Ashley. "My adoptive parents were good people. They raised me with love." "I'm glad," said Michael. "Jennifer would be glad too." At the end of their meeting, Michael made a proposal. "Ashley, I know I can't get back the lost time. I can't be the father I should have been from the start, but I can try to be a father from now on." "You want that?" she asked, surprised. "Very much," he confirmed, "if you'll let me." "What about your current family?" "My wife and my children already know about you," he said. "I told them everything when I got your letter. They want to meet you too." "Really?" "Really," he confirmed. "My wife said it's important for you to know you have family on both sides." Ashley began to cry. "I spent my whole life thinking I had no one," she said, "and now I find out I have family everywhere." "You do," Michael confirmed, "and will make up for lost time." The months that followed were full of growth and healing for Ashley. She split her time between getting to know her new paternal family and fully reconciling with Richard's family. Jennifer's memorial was created, a scholarship for young mothers who wanted to continue their studies. The first recipient was an 18-year-old girl who had been kicked out of her home by her parents when she got pregnant. Ashley and Matthew bought their own house but remained close to the entire family. Richard became a caring and attentive father-in-law, always trying to make up for the years of hurt. Barbara became a second mother to Ashley, teaching her family recipes and sharing stories about Jennifer. Jessica and Brandon, initially awkward, became true friends, including Ashley in all family events. Michael's family welcomed her with open arms. Her half-siblings, initially curious, quickly grew fond of her. Michael's wife, Linda, treated Ashley like a daughter. A year after the revelation at Barbara's birthday, the family gathered again around the same table where it had all begun. "A year ago, at this very table, our family almost fell apart," said Barbara, raising her glass. "Today, our family is closer than ever. And it's all thanks to Ashley's courage," added Richard. "The courage to tell the truth, even knowing it would hurt." "The truth always hurts at first," said Ashley, "but it's the only thing that can truly heal." "To Jennifer," said Michael, who had been invited to dinner, who, even without being here, managed to bring our family together. "To Jennifer," everyone repeated, raising their glasses. Ashley smiled, looking around the table. Everyone was there. Matthew, her constant companion, Richard and Barbara, who had become the grandparents she never had, Jessica and Brandon, who were now true cousins, Michael and his family, who had embraced her as their own, Mrs. Jenkins, who had kept secrets for so long and could now speak freely. "You know what's the most amazing thing about all this?" said Ashley. "What?" asked Matthew. "My mother always wrote in her letters that her biggest dream was for me to have a big, close family," Ashley revealed. "She never imagined I'd end up with 2 big, close families. Actually 3, Barbara corrected. "How so?" asked Ashley. "Your adoptive family who raised you with love," Barbara explained. "Our family who discovered you always belonged here, and Michael's family, who welcomed you with open arms." "It's true," agreed Ashley. "I have 3 families now." "And they all love you," added Matthew, kissing her forehead. The conversation was interrupted when Mrs. Jenkins brought Barbara's birthday cake. "Mrs. Jenkins," Ashley called, "would you like to sit with us? You're part of this family too." The elderly housekeeper was moved. "I can serve the cake later," Ashley insisted. "Today you're a guest, not an employee." Mrs. Jenkins sat at the table, visibly emotional. Over the years, she had witnessed many dramas in that family, but had never seen a gathering so full of love. "Now it's complete," said Barbara, smiling. "Now our family is whole." "May I make a toast?" Ashley asked. "Of course," said Richard. Ashley stood holding her glass. "I'd like to toast to second chances," she said. "To the possibility of making mistakes and learning, to the courage to ask for forgiveness and to forgive." She looked at each person around the table. "I toast to the love that overcomes differences, to time that heals wounds, and to the family we choose to build every day. And to Jennifer," added Michael, "who taught us that true love never dies." "To Jennifer," everyone repeated. After the toast, as everyone chatted animatedly, Ashley touched the necklace around her neck. The small heart that had belonged to her mother glowed softly in the candlelight. She closed her eyes for a moment and made a silent promise. "Mom, the family you always dreamed of for me has come true. We're happy, we're united, and no one will ever be cast out or rejected again. Your story of pain has become our story of love." When she opened her eyes, Matthew was looking at her with a smile. "What were you thinking about?" he whispered. "I was thinking that sometimes the saddest stories have the happiest endings," she replied. "And do you believe our story will have a happy ending?" "I do," Ashley said, smiling. "In fact, I think the happy ending has already begun." Matthew kissed her gently, and around the table, the family continued talking, laughing, and planning the future. Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the garden trees, and if anyone listened closely, they might have sworn they heard a young, crystalline laugh blending with the wind, a laugh that sounded like approval, like joy, like a mother's blessing watching her daughter finally find her place in the world. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of reconciliation and discovery. Do you believe Ashley made the right choice by revealing the truth, even knowing it would cause pain? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.